I give the floor to the representative of the Russian Federation.
Madam President, since this is the first open format meeting of the Security Council in September, I would like to start by thanking the delegation of India for having presided over the Security Council in August and wish Ireland every success as a presider of the Council this month. This month, in September, will be a year since the Council started discussing the issue of the implementation of Resolution 2118 in the open format. And over this time, this format of the discussion of the Syrian chemical dossier has shown how effective it's become. In the context of the Syrian chemical issue, transparency is particularly important, taking into account the course that has, over recent years, the Technical Secretariat of OPCW has undertaken. We would like to thank Ms. Nakamitsu for presenting the 95th report by the OPCW General Director on the implementation of 2118. Unfortunately, this document is unbalanced, as was also the case in the past. We are particularly dismayed by the fact that, as was also the case in the past, the report intentionally shifts the emphasis when it describes the airstrikes on the 8th of June on the declared chemical weapons facility in Syria. In the course of that strike, 2 cylinders were destroyed, the cylinders which are related to the incident in Duma in April 2018. No assessment of the egregious fact of the airstrike itself, airstrike on the territory of a sovereign state, they're not to be found in the report, nor is there any reaction to that by the Secretary General or the Office of Disarmament Affairs to that. As we could see at the previous meeting, our Western colleagues are also very carefully sidestepping the issue about the airstrike itself, whilst highlighting the movement by Syrians of the cylinders. Even if this is true, and the Syrian delegation at the last meeting has provided us with exhaustive clarifications on this, even if this is a fact, does this justify the use of armed force against a sovereign state? We'd like to ask you to give some thought to the fact who stood to benefit from the air strike, stood to benefit from getting rid of important material evidence in the context of investigating the incident in Duma. Logic dictates that it was certainly not the Syrians who stood to gain from this, because Syrians, just as Russia, are calling upon the Technical Secretariat to conduct an objective investigation. But those who are not interested in such investigation, who are inconvenienced by the proof of manipulations in preparing the infamous fact-finding mission report, well, they certainly stood to benefit from destroying the cylinders. What is striking is the overabundance in the report of details on purely technical issues, such as, for example, the visa issue. We're left with the impression that the absence of real evidence of any violation of the convention by Damascus, the Technical Secretariat is clutching to any routine nuances of bilateral interactions and trying to present the Syrians as very difficult to negotiate with. At the same time, the passage on this are lagging behind developing events and overlook the reply steps undertaken by the Syrian side, and they create the impression that delays are taking place because of the Syrians. For example, nothing is being said about the fact that it was the Director General of OPCW who initiated a later date for the next round of consultations with the initial declaration assessment mission, when he stated publicly that summer in Syria is uncomfortable for the deployment of inspectors in the field. I would like to underscore here that the Syrian side, despite the unprecedented pressure and the policy conducted by the Technical Secretary, the policy of double standard, continues to scrupulously discharge its obligations under the Convention. They do not refuse to cooperate, and they demonstrate the political will to continue dialogue with the leadership of the Technical Secretariat and to do it at a high level. Our Syrian colleagues even today stand ready to provide the Council with the most recent information on these issues. And lastly, We are at the very least surprised by the fact that as a justification for a number of anti-Syria conclusions, the report once again refers to what was said by the Director General of OPCW, Mr. Fernando Arias, when he spoke to the Security Council in June. We have drawn your attention several times to the many inconsistencies in these statements and direct distortions. We, for example, disseminated within the Council documents on that. And we call upon you to study these documents carefully. We also expect that the leadership of OPCW will provide us with detailed explanations in the course of its next briefing to the Security Council, which hopefully will take place shortly. Madam President, the root of all current problems with the Syrian chemical issue to us seems to be in the fact that it has become for our Western colleagues one way of punishing the authorities in Damascus, which they find undesirable. Therefore, it is pointless to try and find anything in there that would be connected to the use or non-use of chemical weapons in Syria or with the issues of non-proliferation in general. The OPCW Technical Secretariat, unfortunately, has become the conduit for this unscrupulous policy and turned the organization from the guardian of the convention into a tool to punish those who are not to the liking of individual states or implements their geopolitical striving. And this is a dangerous leaning towards politicizing OPCW, and it's becoming increasingly obvious month after month. There are many proof of egregious and intentional violations of the convention by this technical secretariat. And the best example is the fraud which was done when the fact-finding mission was being prepared on the incident in Duma in 2018. Correcting them despite the urgings of member states of the UN and the international community is something that the Technical Secretariat, as far as we can see, is not going to do. In the same light, we view the activity of the illegitimate group on investigation and identification, whose creation was crudely pushed through in the Executive Council of OPCW in violation of the principle of consensus and Article 15 of the Convention. Its outcomes withstand no criticism because they are politically biased, factually inaccurate, and technically illiterate. And methodology used there, as well as the methodology used by the fact-finding mission, is in violation of the Convention when it comes to the principles of conducting an investigation, first and foremost when it comes to the chain of custody. The goal of the IIT is not to restore the real picture of events, but rather to fit their narrative to the conclusion that Damascus is at fault. In other words, to fulfill someone's political task. We therefore reject the conclusions in the already issued reports of the team on Al-Tamna and Sarajevo, as well as its future products. It is the biased conclusions by the IIT that were at the basis of the punitive decision to suspend Syria's rights. This is the first such step undertaken against a sovereign state which is scrupulously abiding by the Convention. I would like to underscore that the April decision by the Conference of State Parties is not an expression of the collective will of member states of the Convention, as our Western colleagues are trying to present. This was crudely pushed through by Western delegations in violation of the Convention norms because it was introduced at the Convention directly without being considered by the Executive Council and in violation of the principle of consensus. Factually, I must state that less than half member states of OPCW voted for it, and only 6 Western states from the current membership of the Security Council supported it. The rest members were either against or abstained. This was also the position taken by a number of former members of the Security Council. The policy of double standards by the Technical Secretariat is also seen very clearly in the outstanding issues on the initial declarations on Syria. Damascus, which joined the convention in very difficult and unusual circumstances when there was a military political instability and the terrorist threat fed from outside, and despite this, scrupulously undertook all of the commitments they took on, Damascus is being put in front of very, very strict requirements, and artificial commotion is being created surrounding this issue. At the same time, the Technical Secretariat of OPCW soft-pedaled the situation with Libya, where in 2012 about 500 undeclared pieces of ammunition were found, as well as Iraq. The initial declaration from that country was not confirmed by anyone. It was simply made on the basis of existing UN documents. Madam President, the stance undertaken by the current leadership of the Technical Secretariat is a serious threat for the authority of the OPCW. It casts shadow on its status and one of the pillars of the non-proliferation regime, and also brings into question the effectiveness of the organization's implementation of its mandate. We are a responsible state. We were at the inception of its creation, and we're very worried by this situation, and we see no signs of its improvement, unfortunately. I thank you for your attention.
I thank the representative of the Russian Federation for her statement.